What's up? What's up, everybody? It is me, your host, CJ, with the wonderful, wonderful panel of the gens, our authentic selves. And look, this one's a little serious, a little light, but here's the thing, right? I've always heard this saying, growing up as a child, you tell your kids don't talk to strangers. You're in your house, you're in your family, you and your family, what goes on in this house stays in this house. This really pertains to definitely a specific culture, but I think it transcends that a little bit more, even to this day. Me being a military person, it's just like, look, man, ain't nothing wrong with me. Leave me alone, right? I'm good. I'm good where I am. Have you been in any of those states before? Have you witnessed any of that from your family or from society in general? And that's what we're talking about today. Silence can absolutely be deadly in so many different ways. And being that it's Men's Health Month, right? And me being in the military for sure, I think it's really, really, really important that we have this discussion, right? Now, of course, this transcends past men, of course, over to the ladies as well. But silence is definitely something that you see, as more as a standard that is held to men. It's like, hey, brush it off, dude, get up and go, right? That's what you tell your boys. And I just think we're at a time and place that we really need to address that in more ways than one. Look, panel, what are you thinking? In what ways have you been silenced, or what ways have you seen folks be silenced, and then that become a deadly thing?
Hmm. Well, I guess we can start off from a woman's perspective. It's the whole big thing that became like a nationwide movement is the Me Too movement, if I'm saying that properly. But that's directly related to that, as far as well, it's related to sexual harassment in the workplace and how women weren't speaking up about it. And but I wouldn't say it's limited to that. It's a big thing, period, where things happen, specifically not just to women, but since if we're going to talk about men's health, then I'm just saying it from the women's perspective that a lot of times sexual related things happen to women and then they say nothing about it because of fear, or I mean it could be fear of many things, fear of judgment, or someone will say, well, you put yourself in that position, or why did you do this, or why did you do that, and um there's just so many different perspectives around that. And of course, it can happen to a man too, though. So don't let me say just women, because and for a man, it'd be even more so that they would not want to admit that they were sexually harassed by a female. I mean, it's just not something that most men would be readily admit. So that's one area that I know that silence can be. It's not, not necessarily immediately deadly, but it's something that would build up over time. It can be deadly in other ways because of the stress, or you're not reporting a specific person, and then they keep doing this to a number of individuals, that it can become a huge issue.
Mm. To lighten the mood up there, just you said that men wouldn't uh wouldn't want it. They would feel some kind of way if they were sexually harassed by a woman. They they probably wouldn't want to come out with that. I mean, I don't know. You talk to some high school boys. I don't know. Just saying.
But sometimes though, like I think we do have to acknowledge the fact that like people think that men can't be sexually harassed by women. Like so, I don't even know how to like expand on that. I just know that like people do not think that men can be sexually harassed. People just think that like, that men want that, like, just because, it may be in their nature or whatever, like, to have sex or to wanna have sex, but, like, I think that we need to kinda, like, bring that up too, that, yeah, men can be harassed, and it can be public, and it can be, like, intentional. Like, I've seen things, like, online, I've seen things like, even today on TikTok, I've seen something like that where people it was it was like a Twitch stream. Someone I don't really use Twitch, but, like, it was a clip of a Twitch stream, and it was, like, a celebrity who's in power, and the person that they were, on the live with, his sister was just, like, literally touching him in his private areas, like, on the like, right there. And people are in the comments like, that's not harassment, whatever. Like, she's just really excited to meet him and this and this and this. And so I definitely think that we need to acknowledge the fact that, again, that men can be sexually harassed.
Yeah, I heard about that. They was just talking about that earlier. The dude from Power, Tariq. I think the kid name is
Hmm.
that plays Tariq on the show. So
Michael Rainey Jr.
I
Yes.
don't know. I don't know his name. I don't know all of that.
And
Yeah.
But
who was touching him?
So he was on someone's live stream. I don't know the creator, but he had his like sisters come in, and she like so there's two people sitting like in the chair. He's standing up behind them, and then the sister is literally like standing next to him, like hugged up on him. She's just like reaching over, like touching him. You can see it on the camera, but
Okay. Okay. Well, I think we could wait a minute now, because I'm a baby boy power person, so we could like digress. But I do want to go back to to Kyra's point. I think even though it's a heavy topic, it's really important because um if we're talking about silence kills and people are being sexually harassed or assaulted or things like that, there's two pieces of that. One is I don't want to say anything. I am silent. It happens to me. I am silent and I don't want to say anything because I see how others have been treated in that space and I don't want to go through that. So I carry the stress of and the pain and the anguish and all of those things that are related to that assault, and it causes internal, because stress negatively impacts our health. Like you can get an ulcer or be depressed or all of those other things. Or I could speak up and then someone silences me. That didn't happen to you. We can talk about, to Kelly's point, the children who were sexually assaulted in the church and tried to tell their parents and they were silenced. That didn't happen to you. Stop talking bad about your pastor, whatever, whatever. In both instances, whether I silence myself or someone else silences me, the depression has moved people to suicide. So when we're talking about silence kills, that can be either I silence myself or for embarrassment or whatever, or someone else silences me, and they both end up being in the same trajectory of someone deciding to unalive themselves. So it's super important to kind of look at both of those aspects when we're talking about how it can kill, how silence can kill, and who's silencing whom.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely multiple perspectives. I mean, I think, just considering kind of like the month or so that we're talking about, right? Like just us silencing ourselves, right? How is that? You're sitting in the back of the classroom when you know you need to be talking, but you're not. When you're sitting in the back of the networking group and you know you should be networking, but you're not. How is that, you know, killing yourself mentally or killing your business, right? Or just killing off this offspring of wonderful things that could happen to you, but instead you decide to just silence.
yeah. And,
you know,
and
you
to
know,
that point, like, you can miss so many opportunities by not speaking up. You can not, you can like appear to be not showing up, I mean, you can appear to show up as like being uninterested. You can possibly not get your full like perspective across when you're doing things like that. So, like, to speak to that point, like, you definitely miss out on a lot of opportunities. You could be You can be like plateauing your own growth, like you're standing in your own way by not speaking up and saying something.
A lot of the times, if we want to go that perspective, we're looking at fear. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times people have, just a fear of talking to another human being, and it's, we since we are the gens, it's like a certain generation, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have some of the technology. So we had to talk to people. We learned the social skill of talking to people. Like I believe that it is a skill to talk to people. And not to knock the current generation, but there's limited opportunities to speak to human beings. Even if you go to the grocery store, the bank, sometimes you have these automatic tellers where you don't have to communicate with anybody. So the lack of the opportunity to, I guess, to actually communicate, and then we want to bring it to a work networking setting, you're like, I don't know what to say. I don't even know how to approach this person. You get what I'm saying? So it's like there's all of these opportunities for you to speak to people, but because there's a lack of you doing it, you don't know how to do it. You don't know how to approach anybody. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like there's a certain level of fear. We could bring up the A word, the anxiety. It becomes a stressful thing for you to be able to speak and to sell yourself, if you will. And it's this topic is just so crazy because it can literally go in a million directions. And I know that y'all touched on, the sexual harassment of men not being able to speak up. Yes, that is a thing. But also just what about in a relationship with the person, and the lady might try to silence the man, you know what I'm saying? Just based off of the idea of men don't have emotions. You know what I'm saying? Like men are just supposed to just take it and go. You know what I'm saying? Like if somebody says something to you, you're just supposed to just kind of just brush it off your shoulders and just rock with it. You know what I'm saying? Whereas you don't necessarily have a say so. Again, we could go a million different directions. We could talk about the workplace. You know what I'm saying? Where folks get silenced and for fear of retribution. You know what I'm saying? Whereas if you say something that, what I don't want to say is sexual harassment, but it could just be somebody just speaking to your character. It could just be somebody basically taking credit for your work. It might be a supervisor that takes credit for your work, and you try to say something and they shut you down. And it's like my word against yours. So this topic is almost like you can literally spawn 1,000 different directions, and we could kind of like pick one and just kind of like just pull it all away. But silence has a way of making an individual feel less than who they are. Because when you're silent, it's the idea of, to some degree, a lack of knowledge, a lack of self-love, to some degree, a lack of respect for oneself, a lack of just knowing who you are in that particular space and time. That's kind of how I see it when a person is silent and you don't fight for yourself. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lack of you just knowing what you want and going after it. Just my thoughts.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, I'm a firm believer. The number one skill set in life is the ability to communicate, right? The ability to communicate, to express one's ideas outside of yourself, right? To be able to transfer those thoughts and those ideas over to another individual. That is absolutely the number one skill set. Otherwise, a baby wouldn't eat, right? And I didn't say use English. I didn't say use Spanish. I didn't say use a particular language. I said communicate. Just finding a way to communicate in any way, shape, or form. And without that, you'll go hungry. With that, so what has it cost you in opportunity being silent in your life? What does it cost you? Because I mean,
Relationships, money, etc. I'm sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
no, I mean, no, I'm getting deep. I'm getting real. Don't just give me the overall answer. Tell me about your life. Where have you lost out on opportunity? And I would, I'd stand strong on it. Out of everything that we talked about, from all of the horrible stuff to the business stuff to the baby stuff to the all the stuff with not being able to communicate, Every last one of those things goes back to opportunity. It was an opportunity to grow. It was an opportunity to get past something. It was an opportunity to, it was an opportunity. Where have you lost out on opportunity in your life because you were silent?
Hmm.
Ooh. We authentic, y'all. Let's
Right now.
go. Come on now.
See how silence kills? See?
That's one of those things, once you start talking about, then you be like, oh yeah, I gotta think about this. I know something popped in my head, but I'm like, I don't know if the I remember I can go all the way back
You
to
were censoring yourself. Go ahead.
I mean, no, I really was trying to think of a valid, I don't know, I don't want to say valid, but just something that anybody cares to hear about.
We care. We care. We
We
want to hear it.
I
care.
don't know.
That's a
No,
strong
but
word.
the first thing that came to my mind, and this is taking it way back to before I graduated from high school, um, a conversation that I should have had with my parents. And I know that sounds weird. I mean, when I tell you what I'm talking about, but my parents gave me a rule. First of all, I'm the eldest of 8, so they hadn't done this before. And so here I am. I'm this basically straight A student, and I want to go to college. And they said, well, you have to go to school at home your first year because so many kids go away to school and there's a waste of money, waste of time because they don't really, it's not what they really want to do. But I knew what I really wanted to do even at that point because I was committed and dedicated to school when I was in school. So, but I'm not the one to push back. And I just said, okay. And I only applied to 2 colleges and when I graduated, because it's like, well, they said I can't go anywhere else except home. And so that's what I did, because I followed instructions. But I'm like, every time I don't know why I thought about that so much later on in life. I'm like, think about what I would have done, maybe, maybe nothing would have changed. I don't know. But I just remember thinking that's a conversation I should have a time when it would be for me to stand up and speak up to my parents and be like, okay, let's have a heart to heart. And you know me, you know the person I am, and this is what I see for my life, and this is what I like to do. But I didn't. And I ended up taking that's how I ended up taking that gap year that I didn't plan to take because I was accepted to one school, then we moved to another state, and that's the other place. And because I wanted to be a music major, I had no training, so I didn't pass the audition. And, I'm like, well, I'm just gonna wait it out until, I'll take some local classes and blah, blah, blah. So anyway, that's how I took a gap year because I didn't apply anywhere else.
Mm.
So that's not a deep story, but that's just the first thing that came to my mind.
It is deep.
Yeah.
You just, what I heard was possibly, correct me if I'm wrong, it feels like you feel like you might have lost out on life experiences. That's deep. That's real deep, right? Yeah, don't silence that.
That's
Absolutely.
so deep that it could have changed the trajectory of just your life and just kind of like where you've gone. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's deep as well. That's real.
There have been opportunities, and I know people who know me probably don't think that this is something I would have ever struggled with, but speaking up for myself and in speaking up for myself in specific spaces. So, like dealing with, I think parental relationships can be hard, Kyra, because we grow up in a space and then we have an authoritarian situation, and then when we start to get to be adults we have to like carve that space out for ourselves so that we're no longer the child but the adult child. So in having and not being able to speak up for myself in to my parents or my guardians, I found that I was stressing my body out because I was holding on to things that, because I didn't have a way to express it and feel like I was comfortable expressing it. And that manifested in my body. So I got sick. Like I did have an ulcer. I did get a disease because I was not allowing myself to speak. So when we say what kind of silence affected me in or affected a person in how they move forward, it negatively affected my health, which can be a killer, but it also put me in a position where I didn't really feel comfortable. So being able to move more freely or feel more comfortable, I it silenced me that way. So I lost out on um in some respects the ability to speak up for myself. So what I started to do is like every year I said, on my birthday, like this year, I'm going to be more confident in speaking up for myself and more confident because sometimes you can speak up for other people. I can speak up for other people sometimes more than I could speak up for myself in the past, at least. So that's how it, it hurt me. Like it stopped me from being able to move forward in spaces because I couldn't find the words or the confidence to speak up for myself in those spaces.
And so I'm gonna piggyback, like, well, not piggyback off of your experience, but just kind of like agree. I feel like I w- was silenced unintentionally as a child. I feel like I wasn't always allowed space to to speak my thoughts, and so like not only can silence like be a killer, but like not being heard. Like even in those opportunities, like where I am speaking up for myself, it's like, okay, well, that's not how you feel, or like being dismissed. But like for me, I feel like I missed out on a lot of years to just like to be my authentic self or to figure out what that meant like at an early age. And so now I feel like I am spending a lot of my time, which I mean people say it's supposed to happen in your 20s, but like I feel like I'm spending a lot of my time like finding that voice and trying to figure out like, you know, who am I, like how do I use a voice that I wasn't able to use? Like a lot of people know me as just like the silent person. I don't want that to be my personality because like I know that I have like a lot of value to add to conversations, to relationships, to all types of things. So just like I feel like not speaking up for myself not only has like put me in that situation where I'm having to like navigate finding my voice, but like it's also like Johan said, like missing opportunities at work, missing, opportunities for growth in other areas. So that's kind of where silence has gotten me, but I am like proud of where I'm at now and the fact that I am able to use a voice that I have now.
That's what's up. That's what's up. And to that point, as I'm sitting here listening, like, is that something? Because there's a lot of people that go through what you just kind of described as far as growing up in certain households where it's kind of like children are seen but not heard. You know what I'm saying?
In
So
a
it's like
child's place.
exactly, stay in the child's place,
Hmm.
right? You see adults talking. It was for me. I'll be honest. Like for me, it was I got the look. Like, what are you even doing here? You know what I'm saying? And so internally, it's like, well, damn, I can't, I shouldn't be here right now. So it's not even having a voice, but I'm not even supposed to be here. And when that happens multiple times, I feel like it's something that gets embedded in us to not have a voice. You know what I'm saying? So it silences us. I don't believe that the intent is there, but the overall action of somebody's like over and over again telling you go over there. You know what I'm saying? When I'm here with the adults, you go over there and you don't even speak. You know what I'm saying? And so it's pretty just interesting in how, of course, those types of things manifest itself as an adult. You know what I'm saying? So now, just like you said, and I could definitely be transparent and say that I've definitely, as an adult, had to find my voice. You know what I'm saying? Had to figure out, who do I need to be? Who is Johans? You know what I'm saying? Because yes, I grew up in that generation where it was like, yo, if you see grown adults talking, You step to the side, like you go to your room or you go wherever, and you didn't necessarily develop that level of communication to know how to speak, so yeah, you just touched on a nice point right there, where silence sometimes comes from the first our first school, which is home.
Mm.
Right. And it becomes habitual, right? Even though that may not be who you are or who you desire to be, but and you know that there's something different on the inside, but it's become such a habit that you've dealt with, right? From your adolescence on through, up into your 20s and could go through people sometimes get trapped into this and never get out, right? There was a whole generation called the silent generation, right? Like this is it is absolutely a thing. And so, I'll get a little personal with y'all, right? Like I most definitely grew up in one of those households, right? Like it's like, look, no, we the grown-ups is talking, gone somewhere, right? Um, and that showed up in many different ways. And so, when you become a teen, then you got especially for young men, it's like, yo, and I mean maybe for girls too, but I know obviously from my perspective, um young men was just like, hey, make sure that you are not just following along with your crew, right? Don't it's what's the saying, guilt by association, right? Those types of
Mm.
things. And so I became silent within my friend groups, right? I'm silent within my friend groups, and now it's like, oh, well, they got this idea to go do this, and it's like, all right, okay, cool. Well, I'll just go with them. That growing up in the wrong place is not a good look, right? It becomes really risky for a teenager, right? And so I have a 13-year-old son, and I parent different because I was parented that way. I parent different, right? Me and my wife, we make sure that our kids, you're loud, right? Like it is what it is. You're heard, right? It is what it is. I know sometimes it's gonna piss me off, but I'm like, hey, you know what? It's fine. I know what I'm doing. We're teaching them a particular thing. Your voice not only is heard, but needs to be heard, right? On all types of things. And so, because I don't want them to miss out on things, because I look back at I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this. So when I graduated boot camp, in Marine Corps, I was actually the guide. So the guide is the leader of the platoon. This person, male and female, is a one, right? They're the best of the best of their platoon, right? And overall, right? I'm not gonna say I was the fastest runner in there. I wasn't the fastest runner, but I wasn't. I darn sure I was like third or fourth or so, right? Um, I wasn't the best at all of these individual things, but when you put everything together, right? Like I was that dude. But here's the thing. Towards the end of boot camp, right before we graduated, my senior drill instructor, I remember it to this day, came up to me and said, "Hey, Carter," he pulled me into his hut and said, "Hey, man, I know you've been our guide for the longest, right?" And so in boot camp, there's about with us, it was about 8 other platoons. And so they all had their own guide or their guy that was in charge. And I was one of those that was in charge of this platoon. And every week or every other day, you would see them changing out. But I was the longest standing guide throughout boot camp. Because again, I was that dude. And I remember right at the very end, he came up to me. My number two guy in our platoon was a 5-year vet from the Navy, and he had to go through Marine boot camp. He was 20, 24, 25 years old, and taught me a lot, right? He was a good mentor of mine. But again, it was like they gave me that spot. I had that spot, and I was 17 when I went in. At the end of boot camp, right before we graduated, senior drill instructor came and said, "Hey, you have basically maxed out. So if you graduate as the number one or the number two, This is the rank that you're going to be. This is the money that you're going to get, period.
Mm.
But if you're number two, if he graduates as number one, he will get a higher rank, which will mean he will get more pay as well. And he's already been in the military for 5 years. And I was like, yo, I mean, we built a bond. Like, I was like, yo, absolutely. That's my dude. Go ahead, give it to him. And I graduated at number two. But it's always kind of sat with me. That's like, you know what? Regardless of how it kind of panned out, I should have competed for it. I should have said something like, yo, let's compete for it. Let's race for it. Let's run for it. Let's do some push-ups for it. Something. Let's do something to compete for it. Because that's the kind of person that I am, right? Regardless, I probably would have gave it to him anyway. But I'm still a little angry with myself that I was silenced about that, because I am a true competitor, and whoever you are, you should be true to that at all times. So yeah, that's the thing, right? Like, so what are we when we notice that these things are gone, right? So when we notice that we've gone through this, and you want to circumvent that from now on, what are you building within yourself, right? What is there a lack of, and what are you building within yourself? What is that call to you, to never do that crap again?
I call it my inner power.
Okay.
I build up my inner power, right? Like the thing is that you got to recognize it. And so I was even going to ask that question about, I'm saying, how do you parent now? But you kind of spoke to that already. And even talking about, yeah, I'll just jump on the inner power. And so for me, it's like when things happen, it's like sometimes I know for me, and I'm thinking back because now you got me thinking about just different instances in my youth and how, sometimes you just don't speak up because of your youth. Sometimes you just don't know that you have a voice in that particular space. So it's like sometimes you could be taken advantage of because they know they could to some degree manipulate you because they're older than you. You get what I'm saying? And they're like, okay, because hey, he's 17, you know what I'm saying? He doesn't know any better. This guy's been in the military for a number of years, so he's good. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like just like you just said. I mean, you should have said something, but to some degree, you're still learning your space. You're still kind of finding your voice. You get what I'm saying? And so for me, I know what was lacking was my inner power to say, hey, I have a voice. Either I agree with this or I don't agree with this. But just being able to do that, I feel like is key, because there's a lot of times, like I said, whether it's a personal relationship, whether it's a work relationship, whether it's just to some degree just a Joe Blow just passing by in space or whatever. It's like sometimes you gotta know how to use your voice just to kind of say, well, you're in the power to use your voice. So for me, it was that part. It was just lacking of the inner power and the ability to just do that.
Yeah, I know for me, I've like Kelly, I'm known for being a quiet person. It's just that's just always been my personality. So in whatever situation, I just often didn't have much to say. And if something were happening to me, yeah, I pretty much just take it and keep it moving. That's just what I've always done. And as I've aged, um, I I have developed more of the, well, everyone tells me that as you get older, you kind of get the I don't care attitude. It's just like what comes up comes out. I mean, it's not happening quite like that, but I am way more vocal than I used to be. And yeah, I've learned a lot growing up. And I mean, and there is a time for me when it is time to just watch something, I don't mean like watch someone else be assaulted. I don't mean like that, but I'm saying if something is happening and okay, I'll take it in and come back later and say what needs to be said. Sometimes you don't need to, snap or go off on a person right then in that moment. It just depends. Um, but I know for me, sometimes I'll have to take a minute and think on it and decide how I want to respond in a certain situation. My mom is big on writing letters. It's That's something people don't do anymore, but but I have written a few letters over the years. You know, if I had something I really wanted to get out, I'll write it down. You know, or even write it down to yourself to help you work out something. You can do that too, and then decide how you want to handle the situation. But yeah, just finding your voice is a good thing to do.
I hope I never make you mad enough to write me a letter, because I would be
Right.
afraid of that. Child, if I get a letter from Cover, I know there's some fire in there. But I think going back to like how we're raised, I think it was like the seen and not heard thing. I have kind of a unique way that I was growing up, because I was primarily raised by my grandmother, who's part of the silent generation, like the 1920s, the older, like my mother was a boomer, and she's obviously older than my mom. So that 1920, right? But she
Mhm.
was also a politician. So in our household, there was lots of opportunities for talk about politics, to learn about things. But there was always still that one thing she said that drove me crazy. She's like, "What do you know? You're a minor." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" So like that children not seen and seen and not heard thing, it wasn't so much you shouldn't be seen and heard, but it was so much that you're not old enough or smart enough to have an opinion. And so like CJ, when you were talking about how you're raising your children different, that's kind of how I took from that for my children, because I'm like, I think that we forget that children are humans and they come out hardwired. Like there are ways that we can guide them, mores and what we're doing, but they're hardwired. So we give them a space to talk, like you said, and be loud and have conversations. And I have three daughters who have three different opinions. We'd all watch the same movie, and then we'd have a chat about it afterwards, like, what did you think, whether it's a horror movie or a cartoon or whatever. And each of them would have a different perspective based on their own brain and ability to discern and so forth. And so that's a way that I started to give my children a voice when they were younger, to kind of compensate for what I realized was I had half a voice sometimes. You know what I mean? Like we could talk about, Republicans and Democrats, and my grandmother was on the city council and she had marched with Martin Luther King, and my mother was a Black Panther. So there were lots of conversations about uh, history and that sort of stuff. But there were still places where they were like, well, you're just a kid. You don't really know. So that's where but if I was in school, I was known as the filibuster, without even knowing what a filibuster was, because whatever came to my head and how I thought about things and my questions that I had would be what came out. So I think that as I've gotten older, I have um I really have to stand up for myself and feel like in every space where I didn't feel like I was comfortable standing up for myself, because speaking is different than necessarily standing up for yourself, right? And so that's kind of that silence of not standing up for yourself when someone calls your name, or someone says, or you don't know something, or so. And learning in the workplace, like how to speak up and when to speak up. I got lucky because some of the jobs that I've had, like human resources and some other positions I've been in, I'm like, oh, this is how it works in a job setting, to make sure that you're protected, that you understand that, they can't discriminate against you because of a color or a race or gender, or like they keep adding stuff. At this point, they can't discriminate against anybody for anything, because everybody's a protected class, almost. So those sorts of things where, um, Johan, you said something earlier about not speaking up is possibly fear. And I was thinking about a coworker of mine who he said that he wanted to be in management, but when he was in meetings, he never spoke up about anything. And I asked him why. And he said, because everybody's already said what I was thinking. So I should, there's no point in me saying anything. And so I don't think it was fear. I when you said that, I thought about that particular situation. It was just like, well, I'm silent because I don't want to be repetitive. But in his space, if he wanted to be a manager, and I said this to him, if you want to be a manager, you have to let people know what you think, even if it sounds repetitive. Like, even if you say, well, to Marcia's point, X, Y, and Z, they know you're thinking, they know that you're interested in what's going on, and then they'll think about you in the next space when you apply for the position or if they're looking internally for a position. So we have to think about why we're being silent and what our end goal is to see if we are not, cutting off our nose to spite our face for not speaking up in those spaces.
Even in that example, I still stand by the fact of, because even if you want to add on to a particular point and you feel like you have value, I feel like there's a certain sense of fear. You know what I'm saying? There's a certain
Mm-hmm.
sense of, oh, they're gonna think I'm being repetitive. So you're already doubting yourself, which is could be coupled with fear. You know what I'm saying? You're already telling the story of somebody else, which in turn to me is a certain level of fear, a certain level of they're gonna think this. You know what I'm saying? So it's just like you mute yourself, you shrink yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I wonder because it becomes habitual. I don't know who said it earlier, but it does become habitual because if you do it in this space, almost guaranteed that you're doing it in other spaces. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And we can even talk about, in men and how sometimes that the saying always goes that men don't go to the doctor. We know what I'm saying? Like we'll have a pain and we'll be like, all right, I'm just gonna ride it out. I'm gonna put some Robitussin on it. You know what I'm saying?
Some Windex.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And some of those things. I know for me, like if I'm feeling a certain way after a couple of days, I gotta go get it checked. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like being silent, that could really be a killer when it comes to our health. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And even though I'm saying it could be a fear, I know a lot of dudes, I know a lot of women who they won't go to the doctor because of that fear. I don't want to know what it is. You know what I'm saying? And so because of course, once you find out, now it's like, oh my gosh, it could be this, because then the anxiety, then you start going in a different direction and things of that nature. So I feel like fear is key in just the unknown. You know what I'm saying? The unknown, how somebody else. So it's almost like, yo, you seeking validation from somebody else to put you in that particular space. Just getting back to your point.
And I'll take it a step further. It's a fear of being visible. It's a fear of
Mm-hmm.
being seen. Like we
Mm-hmm.
are, I truly believe, and not everyone does, and
That's real.
but I truly believe that you are a superhero pretending to be an ordinary person, right?
Oh man.
Each and every person. You're just pretending to be somebody that's invisible, somebody that's insignificant. And the thing is the way we get better is that's what diversity and inclusion is today. It's not about color, it's not about race, it's not about all of that stuff. It's not about the visible stuff. It's about the ideas. It's about the background. It's about the experiences, right? Yes, that translates into everything else, but that's in its essence what it's about. Is I want if when we put our minds together, we're greater, right? That's just it. Even the smallest idea can be the very thing that holds up an entire pyramid, right? So that's the thing. I really think it's people's um, you know, fear of being visible. You don't want to be that person that's standing in the middle of the road for everyone to see you. And I think that when you address that, when you finally come to that realization that you are trying your best to be invisible, um you have to ask yourself why. What is it within yourself that that isn't pure or isn't ready? What is that thing? What is that thing that you, and it doesn't need to be pure, I use the wrong word, but just what are you trying to hide? right? And so I tell a lot of people, and I stand on it. I stand on this thought. If a nervous person comes around me, yo, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. You are that person. And this comes from my military training, right? This is that authority training. If a nervous person, if I can tell you, you walk into my presence with nervous energy, yo, I'm on edge about you. I really am. I'm looking at you sideways. I'd much rather you come comfortable, come in a place where or at least you're trying to get there, right? But that nervous energy, no, I don't play with that. Get away from me.
Yeah, that's a safety issue for sure.
Right. Right. And so I said something a little earlier. What I think it is there's two types of in leadership. There's internal and external. Right. And so when you can become that leader on the inside of yourself, right, and say, hey, my things have value. If saying those affirmations, right, affirming that to yourself so often, it's eventually going to trickle over to the external side, right? And you're going to be able to tell other people these things. So I think that's what it is we may only think of leadership as the aspect of who's in charge or something like that. No, leadership is just being able to stand 10 toes down on an idea. That's just it, right? So I think that we should be doing more of that. How do we activate our leadership?
I think that you have to build trust in yourself and you have to build confidence, but we've talked about this before. Like, you have to build confidence by doing it, by going out and doing the thing that you're scared of. Like, even if it's going to be bad, even if you're not sure that people are going to agree with you or think that it's a good idea, like, I think that doing it anyway um is really the only way to do that. Honestly, speak up, speak out. People don't know what's in your head. And crazy because my family says that to me all the time. People don't know what you're thinking. People can't read your mind. So it's just like, say it, and we can just kind of go from there.
That's what they always say, do it scared. Like even if
Yeah.
you have the tickle in your voice, I can hear it, right? I can hear if you're scared, but if you act like you ain't scared, I'll be like, maybe I ain't heard
Mhm.
that right.
Yeah. And then even like, say I am scared, like I'm doing a presentation or a performance, whatever, like I can start scared, but then like as it goes on, however, whatever it is, like you gain confidence by just being up there and saying, and just
That's
and
right.
just by like doing the thing.
That's right.
Mhm. I
Mhm.
experience that all the time in performing. I'm like that. It's kind of amazing to myself that I went that way, becoming a performer, because I'm like, "Psh, I'm gonna stand up in front of how many people?" But it's but that's a different space for me. But I've also done public speaking. Now I haven't done that in a long time, but I
You're
did
doing it now.
in college. Well, yeah, even doing this, you couldn't
Big
have told me
facts.
I would have been doing this. I'm like, okay, all right, okay, yeah.
That's
That's what I
funny.
was saying to myself. I was like, okay, all right, well, I'm here, I'm doing it. But I can remember I did a public speaking contest um, in
Wow.
college, and I also did a performance, like a monologue. It was for an acting thing, and I'm like, so I have my moments when I surprise myself, like, okay, I mean, you're capable. Just gotta, and I definitely had to get past it as a singer. I had my times of holding the and that happening while I'm holding the microphone, but you know, but yeah, the more you do something, the better at it you become. So you gotta speak up. But on the other side, not other side, but other direction, I know we wanted to touch on the men's mental health specifically. And I hope I'm not changing the subject too quickly for somebody else. But I think that goes back to fear, like Yoss was saying, the reason why a lot of men won't speak up and when they're feeling a certain way, because it's men and feelings. A lot of times, those don't go together publicly. Men doesn't often, they're taught not to have feelings or at least discuss their feelings with someone else. So if a man is feeling off, most of the time they're not going to admit that. It would take someone else that's in tune with them to notice it and inquire about it in order for them to speak up. But in family, as a society, we need to be able to encourage a man to speak up when something's not right, not right within himself.
Yeah, I agree. I think that it is a society, like society made that a normal where men showing up and expressing their feelings is not acceptable. Like, not that I'm agreeing with that, but like that's kind of like where we are today. And like now we're trying to, we're trying to get away from it. We're trying to bring awareness, but like for the longest time, like men showing their feelings like was not okay. So I do think that we need to be better. Like even like me as a woman, like to be a safe space and to like like I said, like encourage people to be able to speak up, because sometimes like even the people closest to you, like we may recognize something, but that doesn't mean that you're comfortable talking on it to me. You know what I mean? So it's like past that, like we have to be better at honestly just listening and yeah, just listening.
Yeah.
I think it's a little step further with like being available and listening. Like sometimes you just gotta drag their ass to the doctor because like there are certain annual tests that people need to take, male and women, men and women have to take different tests, and we just have to drag them to the doctor. Like I had to drag my dad to the doctor. Come on, we got to get, we got to get looked at, because even if something is changing, eyesight, let's say, if your eyesight is changing or you're hearing, my dad can't hear nothing. I was like, when was the last time you went to the ear doctor, sir? But we have to drag them to the doctor to, if we love them and we know that they haven't been in 5 years or 10 years or, 7 years or whatever, like, let's just get an annual checkup. Let's check our eyes. Let's check, these things, because people don't want to go to the doctor. They don't want to feel vulnerable. Maybe they don't want to feel like they're not the protector of the family. Maybe there's a lot of nuances that may be involved with why a father, a husband might not want to go to the doctor, but because we care, we just have to drag them, make the appointment and take off work and be like, guess where we going? Afterwards, do like the kids. Afterwards, we're going to get
Sure.
ice cream.
Go ahead. Yeah. So let's look at it from this perspective. As people, progress through life, sometimes it's the fact of things are changing. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you could talk about, eyesight, things of that nature. You're just not yourself anymore. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? So that's a piece that is not easily talked about, because it's just like, especially if you're not or haven't gone through it, you know what I'm saying? It's a change that you're just like, what the hell is going on? Please pardon me, but you don't know what's going on, and it's something that's different. So it's not so much readily or easily available for you to be able to express it, because you're trying to get around to it to figure out what it is. You know what I'm saying?
mhm.
As far as, things that could possibly be happening. Um, as far as men being able to express themselves, believe it or not, we express ourselves a lot. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes it might be the lack of a safe place or lack of reception to actually be heard. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes we'll speak our mind, but the person that's receiving it, oh, I didn't like the way you said that. You know what I'm saying? So then it gets shut down, or it gets redirected, or it gets thrown in your face. So now this safe place that I had, it's not safe anymore. And
Mm,
most men I know for me, if I'm in a particular, or if I feel like it's a safe place and you deteriorate that safe place, you really don't, I hope you don't think I'm coming back to that place, right? You know what I'm saying?
right.
And it usually just takes one time. And, even with that being said, there still has to be a place to whereas you vent. You get to a place or you get to a group of people where you can vent because there's no need for anybody, man or woman, to hold everything in because you will blow one way or another. You know what I'm saying? But when individuals don't have that place, doesn't have that person, don't have that safe environment, that safe place, yes, if I'm vulnerable with you, you either throw it in my face or you act like you're not listening. Why would I want to come back to that safe place or lack thereof? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it's just men are we're particular with who we share things with because yes, there is that societal norm of men be strong and this, that, and the third, and we are strong and we're gonna be strong. But when we do, for lack of a better phrase, let down our hair and want to just be vulnerable with our person, whoever that is, we don't want to be ridiculed, judged. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to be stuff thrown back in the face because, like I said, once the safe place is broken, it's like trust. Once the trust is broken, it's hard to build it back up. Just my thoughts.
Indeed. I will, from the military's perspective, right? There's just conversations that I won't have with regular people. I just won't. And all of us will not because there's no point. Because you won't understand where we're coming from with it. And so it's best that we get into our own circles to be able to have those discussions. Because there's things that things that we did that no one would understand. No regular person that hasn't experienced that, and especially having a combat action ribbon going and actually doing these things, I could never talk to you about it, right? In talking to a therapist, talking to, some licensed professional or whatever, I mean that's cool and all, but it only gets you to a certain area, right? It's only when you have that discussion with me, so I still talk to plenty of my guys that I was over there in Iraq with, right? We talk at least, 2 or 3 times a week. And there's just again, there's just yeah, I guess you can call it yeah, it's a safe place to have those discussions, but because it's safe because no one else can relate to that. Or people that haven't had that experience, they just can't relate to it, right? You don't want to be you don't want to be judged, but you it's not really that. It's kind of hard to even put into words. It's like, no, I know that you're gonna look at it in a particular way, kind of like when you're having a discussion with someone, they don't want you to be the solutionist, right? They kind of just want to vent, right? Well, when I'm having these conversations with military guys, it doesn't necessarily sound like it's venting. It doesn't. Doesn't sound like it's venting, but it's just something that you just it's a brotherhood, it's a sisterhood, it's a thing that you just no, I know you won't understand it. And so I have to be in a particular place. And so forcing that person to go to some sort of kind of doctor or anything like that, I think it would before doing that, I would definitely say, hey, find a group, right? Find out who they affiliate with, if you can find it, right? And kind of push them to that space because that is much, much, much more beneficial than just going the other route, right? Because try to push meds down our throats and all that kind of stuff.
So I definitely respect where you're coming from in terms of a mental health space. I think that's why, like, some of those organizations have been created, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, because those folks are in a space where other people can directly relate to what they've dealt with. When I was saying drag somebody to the doctor, there's actually a Take a Loved One to the Doctor Day that was established since 2002. So we're talking about like a medical doctor cancer research, things like that, to make sure that people are getting the tests they need, colon cancer, lung cancer, breast cancer, those kinds of things, to make sure that people are getting those tests so that things don't get out of hand. But I think that's a good point you make, CJ, that if someone is dealing with a specific type of mental illness, that a loved one can recognize, because we can't always recognize it, right? We don't always recognize it or know what to do. But I think that's a really important point, to make sure that people are in safe spaces for that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think also it's just the ability just to have a space, right? So whether, like, just like to CJ's point, to have a particular space where you can go to. Yes, I might not be able to, because I've never done a military. So you speaking to me about something I'm not going to understand, I'm not going to be able to relate. But as long as you have that group, that tribe, that somebody, that some group, et cetera, that you can get to, I feel like that's important. You know what I'm saying? Because you 1,000% correct. There's some experiences just from the different neighborhoods we grew up in that folks just wouldn't understand how you are. That you know what I'm saying? So you can talk to a particular person that knows you from that particular space because they get it. So I feel like it's important to have that, just so that you can, just like you said, just like everybody's saying, just so that you can vent and just get it out. I feel like there has to be a safe space, and we're going to continue. I'm going to continue to use that word, safe space, to whereas you can just get it out and not have it just piling on top of you. Because I feel like that's where the overwhelming feeling comes from. When things literally are like a tidal wave, it gets higher and higher and higher, and it's almost insurmountable, and you can't overcome it. You get what I'm saying? And so that's, again, we got stress. We talked about physical stress that leads to the mental stress that could be as a result of emotional stress or something physical. And next thing you know, you're in a world of trouble. You know what I'm saying? So, and I don't know the right words to say to how to get men and or women to open up, but I know that it starts with having a safe place, having good people around you who value you, you valuing yourself, and you valuing that if I share something with you, I can trust that you are going to do something, or maybe I don't need you to do anything with that information. I just need to be able to talk to you and trust that I can share something with you. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's huge for me as a man who doesn't quite share a lot. You know what I'm saying? Once you show me that I can trust you and you can trust me, now we can build on something. But it doesn't come readily available. And a lot of times people think that it's just this overnight thing that you could just say, hey, trust me, or you can share anything with me. No, it like a relationship, it takes time. You got to build on that. You know what I'm saying? I know we're in a space where, we want it to be automatic to some degree, but it just doesn't work that way. At least it doesn't work like that way for me. You know what I'm saying? And I would venture to say it doesn't work like that for everybody. People are just not open books. People need to know that they can trust so that they can be able to share, if that makes any sense.
You made me think of something. Like, if you're able to find that safe place, and there's still a line there, right? Like, there's some things that are still, these are conversations that are saved for this particular group that I associate with. But I do think, as I'm listening to you and then thinking about that concept, like, as I've had a safe place, every other place has become a little safer. Now, there's still conversations that are reserved, but I'm able to have more conversation. And I'm able to communicate a little bit, live a little bit louder over on the other sides as well. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think being able to have that outlet somewhere helps you live louder in other places too?
Yes, I agree wholeheartedly. I just feel that because in that one space where I'm able to vent and get it out, it's like it's like I said, it's almost like weights are getting pushed off of me. I'm able to think clearer. So it's like if when I'm showing up in other spaces, I can be 100% there. I don't necessarily have to have that particular thought or that situation or whatever the case might be on my mind. So I could be more, more bright, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like I could show up brighter. I could show up just more energy, just enthused about just whatever it is that's going on in that particular space because I had the opportunity to take that weight off over here. You know what I'm saying? So I agree wholeheartedly.
Mm, mm. Wow. So lacking that space can be deadly into all other areas of your life, man. I think that's really eye-opening to me as a interesting concept. But yeah.
Mhm.
And then I'll say this too, right? I haven't heard it in some years. I'm so glad that it's dying down. It really is. But you should see it on TV a lot. But it was men that would just, I mean, it was women that would just, tell men, you're not a man. Oh, that just used to boil my freaking blood. It's like, who are you to
Exactly.
judge what a man is?
What I
There's
got to go
one.
through day in and day out. You know what I'm saying? Facts.
Yeah. That could push a man over the tipping point, right? Of that mental health, right?
Right.
Mhm.
So yeah, but yeah,
And also speaking of I want to connect the men's mental health back to to the point we brought up earlier about your kids and how they're allowed to use their voice or not use it. And because in some reading that I was doing, and it talks about bipolar disorders in men, it's recognized between the ages of 16 and 25. So it's
Mm.
like, but it would take, in order for someone to recognize that, you have to be, well, not have to, but it helps if they're being vocal for someone to even notice that there's an issue, as opposed to the silent child. And not only that, it says 90% of men, or 90% of Americans that are diagnosed with schizophrenia are men, and it's before the age of 30.
Hmm.
So I'm like, okay, that was interesting to me. So this is happening in youth, but someone has to be able to recognize it before you're an much older person and you've had this disorder your whole life and no one noticed.
You said
But
90% of.
Of Americans that are diagnosed with schizophrenia are men.
Hmm.
I thought women was crazy. Jeez, my bad. Don't cancel
Say,
me.
bro. Say, bro.
Yeah. So
Ooh.
I blame testosterone.
Hey, hey, hey. Look. I mean, this has been a fantastic topic. We've touched so many different angles and perspectives of it, and it's so critical, right? It's so critical. Yeah, we're talking about Men's Mental Health Month, but again, mental health in general for everyone, right? Is very important. We should be checking ourselves. Where are we mentally? Are we taking the care? Are we doing the self-care like we talked about a few weeks ago? Are we checking in with those around us and seeing, is this environment, is the environments that we go into, is there always the same problem? Because that problem could be us, right? It's very important that we're kind of just checking in, because mental health is very serious with all the threats that we have towards it now, right? Like social media, and the TV that's, out there, and the lack of, going outside and having life experiences and stuff, right? Like there's so many things that could attack us mentally. And I think it's really vital, that, and timely that we had this conversation, for multiple different ways. Anybody have anything you want to add on to this, right? Like What do you want to add on to this before we drop off?
I think that I have a question for you and Johan. So I mean, I know that we touched on it a little bit, but just kind of like what are some ways besides some like, you know, what we touched on that we could support like more men in, you know, being able to speak up and have that voice.
So I'll go first real quick. Um, there was this movie called The Book of Clarence. Um, and there was a saying in it, and it just touched me. I didn't even know what it meant, but as I started to think about it, and I started looking up other, people's, perspectives on it, kind of where the saying came from. But Clarence's mother at one point or another said to him, "Hold space." And that just struck me. Hold space. And I think that's what, anyone can do for anyone, is to just hold space for that person to experience what they're experiencing, right? For them to go through what they're going through, for them to, like Johans was talking about, be that listening voice there, right? Like, just, I mean, not listen, that listening ear. Just hold space for how that person might be feeling. And um and and recognize and understand that you may not be the one to be the listening ear. You may not be the one to solve this problem. It may just be your job to hold space, to just let it happen, and maybe kind of guide this individual over into another area where they can go and find a solution or so, right? I really think that's just the thing. I think just hold space in your heart, for that individual to figure this out, right? Don't give up right away. I'm not telling you to put up with any crap or anything like that, but I am saying just understand that, there could be things that you won't understand, that you'll be it'll just be a completely misunderstanding if you were to hear anything that was to come out, and allow this person to kind of be where they are.
I definitely co-sign that. And other ways to support is to, we got to start, I guess, debunking some of the, I guess, the myths out there that, that men don't have feelings, that men don't have worth, that, you know what I'm saying? Like, we gotta get to a point where we treat people with a certain level of just treating them like a human. You know what I'm saying? Like, just being like, just like, CJ spoke, just being there, taking up that space, that's key. But just giving a person the opportunity to be themselves. Like, when you give a person the opportunity to be themselves and not what your preconceived notions or society's notions of what they need to be, you allow a person to be free. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you could be looking at me and be like, "Oh, well, Johans, you're supposed to be this, you're supposed to be that," and allow me to show up as me. You know what I'm saying? Without the idea of me, if that makes any sense. Because I tell people all the time, like, yo, like, to get to know me is to get to know who I am, not what you think I'm supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really want to get to know a person, or do you want to get the idea of who they are? To me, that's a difference. So you literally allow a person to be their authentic selves, to show up as their authentic self, and you build from there. Thank you for the question, though. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't normally get asked, "How can I help you?" You know what I'm saying? And I promise this because we're in a society where it's like men are always to some degree placating to women, because that's, it is what it is, and it's like it's refreshing to hear somebody ask, "How could I be of service to you?" to some degree. You know what I'm saying? So I appreciate that. So I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But for me, I think that I I feel like I'm being there, you know, in those spaces, like to be able to to help out or something like that. But like, I also have to understand that like what may work for me or like what is support for me doesn't always work for everyone. So I do appreciate the perspective from both of you on how, you know, on how I can help out too and create that space.
1000%. 1000%. I think I heard this. I was reading this book a little earlier today, and said you know, most of the time when you're having a conversation with someone that's kind of, venting, having a problem, all that kind of stuff, it's not that they're looking for you to necessarily agree with them or disagree with them or, you know, pick their side, any of that stuff. But the one of the major things and main things for anyone is just emotional validation, right? That it's it's okay for you to feel however you feel. I don't need to feel the same way, but it is absolutely perfectly fine for you have the right to feel however it is you want to feel about anything. That's just that, right? Emotional
Agreed.
validation.
Agreed.
Look, go ahead.
No, I was done. I was just agreeing. Kyra had something to say.
I was just gonna say that we also probably should check ourselves sometimes that I know it's a habit of a lot of people and perhaps myself too, when you're listening to someone, that you're actually listening and not just waiting for them to get through what they're saying so you can say your part. I know a lot of people are guilty of that, just yeah, 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 okay, and then I want to say what I have to say. You have to actually listen. That's it.
Yeah.
We have to listen to hear, not listen to respond. That
Yeah,
is important. We talked earlier, we talked a lot about like why aren't we as individuals speaking up in spaces? Is it fear? Is it lack of knowing our superpower? I would just like to remind people to think about why you're choosing not to, why you're choosing to be silenced, why you're choosing silence. And then if it's fear or concern about visibility, why you're not showing up, think about that so that you can really be your authentic self. If you're choosing to be silenced because you are afraid, or you're choosing to be silent because of, how other people may perceive you, just be authentic and show up for yourself.
1000%, because there is only one you, right? And that is the gift that was brought to this world. So don't try to duplicate what anybody else has. Don't try to, dim your light for anyone else, because if you dim your light, you'll cause someone else to dim theirs too. And in reverse, when you shine yours, you unconsciously allow others to shine theirs. Yo, this has been freaking phenomenal. I love it. I love it. I love it. Look, we're doing wonderful things on the channel. This podcast is going to be uploaded. Kelly, you want to run us down on some of the logistics?
Yeah. So, like CJ said, our episode will be uploaded. And we're recording Monday, so you'll be able to watch it on Tuesday. We are at 126 members. So thank you for everyone all the time, every time. We do appreciate you for being here. I do hope that we're adding value to you. And if we are, I do ask that you just share. You can find us on Facebook at the Gens Podcast, Our Authentic Selves. And then on YouTube, we're at the Gens Podcast.
That's where we're at. This has been the Gens, and I hope what you got out of this was well received, and hopefully you get a little bit louder in life. No more silence. That's the Gens. Everyone be great.
Peace, peace.
Bye.